Well, thank you guys for having me today. I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk a little bit about UpThink Consulting and higher ed and the industry kind of as a whole. Based on kind of some of those things you asked me to talk about, I just put a few slides together. Nothing too intense here, but I'm hoping to have a little bit of a conversation around that. So let me just talk first of all a little bit about who I am. My name is Micah Murdoch. I'm the owner of UpThink Consulting. UpThink's been around for about 3.5 years now. And before that, I've spent about the last 20 years or so in educational technology. And that consists of a lot of different experience. I spent some time at Instructure. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today may have a little bit of a Canvas bent. Hope that's okay. Canvas is kind of my home. That's where I feel most comfortable. And that's where I've got the most experience. And I know that Atomic Jolt does a lot of work with Instructure and Canvas as well. So I have experience as the Associate Director of Online at University of Utah. And over the past 6 or 7 years, I've assisted in well over 100 institutions in helping them in some form or fashion to onboard Canvas and to build courses and to create some instructional design efficiencies and to just generally making their classroom experience better. Like I said, UpThink's been around since about 2018. And I've also got some background at good old Go Aggies, Utah State. I got my EDS in instructional technology. So let me just tell a little bit about what we do at UpThink. And this is kind of the best way I could think of to consolidate the experiences that we've had. Generally, we just do educational technology consulting, but that doesn't mean a lot to everyone. Sometimes that's very vague. So the three areas that we kind of try to focus our services on and that we have the most experience and expertise is Canvas onboarding and training. So helping people to better utilize the Canvas LMS, general instructional design, distance online, even live courses. The thing these days is there's so many more titles and descriptors for educational delivery than just online or distance. We've got hybrid and high flex and blended and virtual, and the list is getting longer and longer, it seems like. Any of those formats are within this umbrella, and we help do instructional design for distance in those situations. And then ed tech adoption strategies in general in the classroom. So again, whether that be live or online, if you're using some sort of educational technology and you'd like to get better use out of what you're paying for or what you've bought or what you're trying to use, we help with that as well. So those are kind of the three basic categories. And that ranges in lots of different capacities. It isn't just higher ed. That includes K-12 and even some private situations as well, where we've worked with industry and corporations to try to create some better learning experiences for them. So that kind of goes here. Who do we help? We do have extensive experience both in K-12 and higher ed with large multi-building K-12 institutions. Success Academy on the East Coast has got 40 plus charter schools up and down New York on the East Coast. We've helped build some teacher education training for them, for hundreds of teachers that they hire every single year. It's pretty incredible what they're doing. And then also higher ed, lots of colleges across the country, from here just locally in Utah to ones from California to New York. So we've got quite a bit of experience in higher ed as well. And then on an individual basis, teachers that are looking for better student engagement. And that tends to be kind of a buzzword these days. Everyone's sort of seeking this out with COVID and all the implications of remote teaching and remote learning and how prolific this has become just over the last year. Student engagement's kind of become the holy grail. We want to do what we used to do in our classrooms. We used to look our kids in the face and have these great dynamic synchronous conversations in the classrooms and quickly split into groups and then have them come back and report. And that's such an easy, great thing to do in the classroom. And how do we replicate that to the best we can in an online environment? So we help teachers look for solutions for that. And then also, as I kind of mentioned already, districts and admins, and of course teachers as well. I think that's kind of assumed, who just want to have better adoption of the technology they've used or that they have access to teach their classes. How do we get this into our curriculum? We bought this shiny new app, toy, whatever. We all know that doesn't necessarily immediately translate into better teaching. We spent all this money on laptops. Every kid's got a laptop. Everyone's got a device. Now what? Is that better? It could be. It doesn't have to be, though. It could be worse. In fact, kids are distracted. Kids are doing lots of things they shouldn't be doing with this new technology, or got this new app and we think it's really great, but it doesn't go off well in the first use. And so kids get turned off. And now usage plummets because teachers are frustrated with it. So these are very real situations that I see anywhere from my next door neighbor who's a third grade teacher to my own kids who are trying to navigate their own classes online as they get through this school year, to teachers and admins that I'm working with in a formal contract, and others that are just out there screaming through social media, help me, I don't know what I'm doing. Adoption and use of this technology is going to be, it's never been more important to get it right. But it's hard. And I don't blame any of these teachers. They're working so hard, and admins are just up to their eyeballs, and every 3-4 weeks, the whole landscape changes. And how do we adopt, and how do we stay flexible? So those are all challenges that we face today that have been there for a long time, but have been definitely exacerbated recently with the whole remote teaching. So those are the types of situations that we help with, and the types of environments where we can provide support. But I wanted to not necessarily just talk about UpThink the whole time. I think there's some topics out there that are really interesting and relevant for anyone who might be listening to this, or anyone who's looking for the use of, the better understanding of what might be happening. So what is the future of higher ed? Now, I'm going to just finish that question off by saying, I don't know. Like, nobody knows. If anyone pretends like they know, I think that's pretty presumptuous. A year ago, nobody in their right mind could have ever predicted anything related to what's been happening over the last year. And we know that we are in a new and a shiny new world. But a couple of things I think I do know about what might be happening in sort of a vague sense. But in that first bullet there is that we're not going to go back. And when I say we, I mean like everyone. I would be so surprised if it ever feels again like it did before. And I know I'm not the first one to say that. That's not revelatory, but I'm just throwing my voice into that opinion that we probably will never go back to what it was that we had before. In what fashion? We might get close. We might go back in, much more than we are now. I hope someday we can fill classrooms again and sit within 6 feet of each other. And I hope that someday my kids can look each other and their classmates in the face and know what they look like. I literally had my kindergarten daughter come home from school, and she was so excited because she'd met this new friend, and she invited her to come over to play at our house. And her friend comes over, and they played for like hours, and then they left. And then my daughter came up to me afterwards. She's only 6. And she's like, Dad, I didn't even know what she looked like. That was the first time I've seen her without her mask on. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like, she's known this girl for months and been, friends with her at school, and was so excited to have her come over. But she'd never seen her face. So hopefully we get beyond some of those things. But what we probably won't go back to ever is this same kind of idea of the strategies of what we use to teach in our classrooms. And I don't necessarily all think it's going to be more asynchronous or more online. I think that will always be a part of it. But I think if nothing else, what I mean by we're not going back is that we have literally had to reinvent every aspect of education and how we teach our students, and how we put together a course, and how we deliver that course to our students. And there is an inevitable growth and progress and enlightenment that comes from that. We are more collaborative than ever. People are asking schools and administrators and other districts more than ever, what are you guys doing? Here's what we're doing. Is it working for you? It's not working for us. How do we do this better? How do we do this different? Never before have we been so collaborative and so desperate in lots of situations to do something better than what we're doing now. So unfortunately, we have to kind of hit rock bottom sometimes to feel like it's time to make some of those changes. And that's kind of the second bullet here, is that education has been ripe for disruption for a long time. But I think that this pandemic, if there's any good that will come out of it, one of those good things that will come out of it is that it's this idea that it was sort of the tipping point of this disruption. And now all the rules are gone. There's very few rules of how we do education anymore. And that's true all the way from admissions to assessment to student engagement, as we said before. All of these things have completely been upended in some very negative ways. And again, I'm not here pretending like this is all good. But the thing that is good about it is that we're asking questions that we were unwilling or didn't think were necessary to ask before. And this disruption is coming from lots of different angles and lots of different sources. So it's coming from the students and the parents who are expressing dissatisfaction with the level of their education. Whereas before, it was just kind of the status quo. You show up, even if you didn't like it, it was boring, disengaged. Students just kind of dealt with it because that's how it had been done for 100 years. Well, now they're more willing to say, look, this is like unacceptable to us. I can't figure out even how to turn my assignment in, let alone how to get the work done. And I've seen that from my very own kids. I have kids from high school to elementary, 5 of them that are in schools right now that have very different experiences with all of their different classes. I think that's parents and students are expressing that dissatisfaction. Teachers, of course, they're not satisfied. Teachers know that this is a different kind of challenge than what they had before. It's one more layer. They're exhausted. They're at their wits' end. They've done everything they can, and we keep pulling the rug out from under them. Oh, it's online. No, now we're back in the classroom. Oh, no, back to online. And so the teachers are having to teach both simultaneously face-to-face and online. It's not fair for anyone to have to do. And then administrators, getting direction from the federal educational system and from the state about what they can and can't do and how they can run their schools. Less money than they may have had or thought they had, and then an infusion of money from the government, and then how do we use this money? And so all of those things make for this really interesting scenario where we are ripe for disruption, and it is a perfect time to start rethinking the way that we do all of our teaching and as our students are in the classroom and how they experience that. And there will be, I've heard this saying a couple of times now, you never want to let a good tragedy go to waste. The intention there is this tragic nature of this pandemic can't be overlooked and can't be downplayed at all. But at the same time, it's created a void, a gap that will be filled in one way or another. And that technology, next bullet down, is going to be part of that driver. It's not the only driver, but it will absolutely be part of that driver. And educational technology is something that, if you've been on Zoom in the last couple of months, and most people hadn't even heard of Zoom a year ago. And now it's like a common household word, like it's becoming a verb. I'm Zooming all over. It's just it's one example of many. And there will continue to be technology that presents itself through artificial intelligence, through augmented reality, through just pure kind of straightforward online delivery. All of these things are bubbling up and beginning to show that there are better ways to do what we've always thought we wanted to do, but never really had enough incentive to put all the time and energy and money into making those things, come to fruition. So now that we do have the incentive, because we know that education experience over the last year is not where we want it, generally speaking, overall, all of this investment, all of these opportunities, technology can really help solve a lot of those problems. And it's exactly what we're doing right now. I spent hours and hours on Zoom. I never leave my house. I don't know if that's good, but my commute, I got 2 hours of my life back because I don't have to commute anymore. And my work has not suffered really at all because I've got great access to technology that allows me to communicate, to interact, to engage. It's taken a bit of getting adjustment and getting used to, but it's definitely helping. And then trends towards industry-directed education. This last bullet is probably the one that's most interesting to me. And part of this disruption and part of this technology and part of this not going back is this tendency that I'm beginning to see, and I think it's becoming pretty prevalent, that industry as a whole is also part of this unsatisfied audience with the results of the modern education system as it stands today. In other words, industries are looking for lots of positions, lots of skills, and lots of talent that is really cutting edge, really new, very current, and finding that it's very difficult to find readily available these skill sets in the graduates of the students that are coming out of the education system. I don't think this is a secret to any of the educational systems either. I think all of them are scrambling. University of Utah's, I'm watching them, put millions and millions of dollars that they've been given to them through CARES funds and other sources to redirect a lot of their instructional design that I'm part of into workforce learning and recertifications and skill-based learning. And all of this is in an attempt to retool what we're producing as an educational system to meet the demands of what industry needs. But even beyond that, sometimes it's just easier for the industries themselves to just say, look, we'll create our own training programs, our own educational systems internally. And I've seen this in some of the really big names, Google, Apple, IBM. There's a lot of them out there, but those are 3 that I've read about recently, where all of them in one way or another are saying, to heck with a degree. We don't need you to have so many years of, education. We want you to know how to do our stuff. And so we'll train you. Come do an internship with us, or come join our own internal school or college or university, and we'll train you how to do the things we need our employees to do. and then we'll hire you when you're done. So it's just this like win-win, right? And I can see this kind of a trend being one of those real significant disruptors where industries, big and small, begin to say it's cheaper for me to hire an intern at a low cost and train them up to be a fully developed employee than it is to try to hire college graduates that I've never met, I don't know anything about, that are a risk from the start because all I get is an interview, and then I hire them and they may be, knocking it out of the park, or they may be a total bomb. And every time I hire someone, train them, and find out 3 months later this isn't going to work out, the money spent doing that and the turnover and the cost is so expensive that it's cheaper to just train some of your own people directly. And the analogy I kind of like to use on that is, could you imagine like a football team, a college football team, interviewing players, have them come down and sit down and interview them. So tell me about your stats. Like, how are you at being a quarterback? Are you good? Are you going to work well on our team? Tell me a time when you had to scramble out of the pocket and throw that ball. Like, nobody would do that. That's a silly idea, but that's exactly what we do in our workforce. What football teams do, because they know a lot is on the line, is they scout and they look and they recruit and they do everything they can to find the very best after having this real intense observation. I'm suggesting that industries are going to start doing the same thing in one form or a fashion or another, is they're going to be looking for employees and hires, and they're going to look for more evidence of what they can do from actually having done it, not from what they say they can do on a resume or a CV or in an interview, but from competence-based deliverables, through different demonstrations of, or through like internship type relationships where they can watch them work and they can hire best of the best. So those are some trends that I've seen and I continue to think are relevant in our time today. And this trend towards industry-directed education was not sparked by COVID, but I think as most things, it has just been accelerated. It's just ripped down a lot of the obstacles. And because people are more open now to different ideas of this disruption, and we're not going back, so what are we doing now? All of these things kind of lead into the other. Okay, so I want to kind of just peel back a little bit and get a little bit more practical now. So we've kind of gone into the sky there and talked about what might be happening down the road, what may be the future of higher ed. But there's also the here and now, right? What are we doing today? So I just thought I'd put together some suggestions based on my experience and based on what I'm seeing, based on the current climate of design and coursework and delivery and teaching and anything that has to do with using the educational technology to do all that. And that first bullet on the left, do the best that you can. I mean, honestly, this is the last time in life that you should be like judging yourself or others about doing the best or not, or doing great. I've seen faculty literally, sobbing in front of me out of anxiety and stress for the lack of their own competency that they feel is, impacting the lives of their students. We know that we want to do what's right for the student. I don't know, as much as we might disagree across different deliveries and educational styles and what's good learning and what's not, I have yet to have met anyone truly dedicated to the education that didn't want what was best for the students. So just remember, you're doing the best that you can, and that's all. Just do the best you can. But along that, there are some ways to help you do that, the best you can, and that is take advantage of the support that is available. I'm always surprised by the lack of engagement from the teachers and the admins that I support right now for their lack of interest in coming in times when we're offering support, and they don't participate. They just try to do it on their own. I'll get it knocked out. And they started at 10 o'clock at night and they stay up all night and they're banging their head against the wall because they don't know what they don't know. And this is new ground for them. And just like the subject matter experts or the faculty, I couldn't go into some accounting class and tell them how to be a better accountant. It's not my thing. I don't have any experience in that, no expertise. But just because you're a great accountant and you know how to teach great accounting concepts doesn't necessarily mean you know the best delivery for that and how it's going to be most engaging for students. No shame in that. It's just not necessarily what's there. And so, and particularly if you're using new technology on top of a new strategy. So take advantage of the support that it's available, whether it be from the technology vendor itself, from your internal team, from your own IS team, or from your peers and colleagues, other teachers, other admins. Always got that one person, that one gal or guy that knows it inside and out that can help you. So take advantage of that. Just a reminder that Zoom classes are not online classes. This is another area that's maybe a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, but having been working in online space for, almost 2 decades now, I understand what an online class is and what it isn't. And I think that this has been part of that. We're not going back, and it's not all necessarily good. And that's the time that teachers have spent saying, hey, if I just record my Zoom session and just post it on my class, it's all I got to do, right? And just lecture like I've always done in a Zoom class, record it, post it online. And now my class is online. Kids can watch it whenever they want. And it's all good. There's a lot more to it than that. And students will tell you, if you ask for their feedback, this is not good, especially if these Zoom class lectures are, like an hour or two long. There are ways to break those up. There are ways to do that in a different format, in a different fashion. So don't necessarily equivocate a Zoom class to an online class. And that especially is applying to the idea that, I've heard faculty that have resisted teaching online, that have been forced to recently, and now they say, see, students hate this. It's terrible. I teach in this class online and all my kids are just checked out and it's no good. And this online thing doesn't work. Well, again, a Zoom class isn't an online class, not a fully designed, intended to be online class. And the research has shown for years and years and years that outcomes and course satisfaction are basically equivalent for online and face-to-face with a well-designed online course. So don't let a rushed, forced experience with having to create a less than stellar online class taint you to this idea that, well, online class doesn't work. Students don't like it. They may not like that online course, but that doesn't mean they don't like any online course. And plenty of folks out there would prefer online over face-to-face in lots of ways if it's well done. So just like any experience, face-to-face or online, some classes are great, others are not. It doesn't mean that there's no bad online courses, but that doesn't mean that there's no bad face-to-face classes either. There's good and bad on both, and it's the spectrum. So a well-designed course is always going to trump one that's not. Always try to over-communicate. Next column on the top there. I think that it's common for all of us to overlook the value in a face-to-face class of how often we will communicate one thing with even just one sentence to our class, and all 30 to 50 people hear it at once. And that's all you got to do. You just say it and everybody's heard it and they all now have that information. You didn't write it down. It's not in the instructions. It's not in the course. It doesn't exist anywhere. You just gave it to them and they put it in their notes or something, or they just remembered it. That never happens in an online course because you just don't have that experience. You don't have that scenario where you can just communicate to the entire class synchronously all at once and have that addressed. Same thing with a question. A student asks, one student asks one question that half the class has, and you answer that one question. Now everybody has that information. Even those who didn't even think to ask the question now have that information. So that happens a lot in a classroom. And I think as teachers and as admins, we overlook the value and the frequency of that kind of an interaction. In an online course, because that doesn't happen, we need to build that in. We need to anticipate that. We need to be more explicit in our instructions. We need to repeat what we need to be doing over and over again. We need to remind people through due dates and other things. This is the expectation. This is when it's due. This is how it works. This is what you need to be doing. And students need to have that in front of them, because even if they read it once, if they need it a week later, they can't just, again, raise their hand and ask that same question and have it just given back to them in a 10-second response. They've got to dig back through the course and find that thing. And if it's buried in some online Zoom lecture that was 2 hours long and they've got to find that 1 seconds, or they have to email you and wait for 2 days to get a response, that's going to create so much tension and frustration with the students. So over communicating, saying things over and over again, give them options of receiving that information as thoroughly as you can. And don't just assume, next bullet, that they'll just figure it out. Oh, they're young, they're students, they're tech savvy, they'll figure it out. It took me 2 hours to do it, but they'll probably just pick it up in no time. My wife is also currently taking college classes, and I'll tell you, she doesn't just figure it out. It's not like that. And even young students, they're used to very, very user-driven internet experiences. So when you go to a site like Amazon or Netflix or, these other sites that they visit frequently, some of the social media out there, Pinterest or Instagram, they're very user-driven interface. And so when they jump into a class that doesn't have all that same research and that same effort gone into that user experience, and that's all they've really ever known, and they've got to remember that they got to click on this one sub menu and go over here and click on this, or they've got to find this due date, or or it's just not organized well in anything that makes sense to them, it can be incredibly frustrating. So once again, using some of the resources you have available to you, asking a designer, asking others who have good ratings on their courses, how is your course laid out? And then looking at templates, which we're going to talk about here in a minute as well. And then the last bullet here with a couple of sub-bullets is design and consistency. This is just the idea that don't make every module or every unit or every chapter a totally different experience for your students. Create some parameters, some consistency, and add the theme and the variation, right? We don't want everything to be exactly the same, or that becomes boring and dull and students have a hard time engaging. But they don't want to have to guess where to find the syllabus or how to know where the homework is for this week or where the quiz is going to be posted or where to find due dates on how they, when they need to turn stuff in. If you're going to find a way to do this, do it the same every single week, every module, every time. However often that is repeated, have it be the same, with the variation being the content that they're studying. The quiz that they're taking is different. It's different every week. The content is going to be different every week. So allow that to be the variation in your course and allow the structure and the layout and the way that it's navigated to be the theme. This is the same every week. And then this idea of bounded choice gives you this concept of there are parameters, there are bounds, and then within that, there are some flexibility. That has more to do with the assignments that you give your students. Allow them to say, hey, here are the parameters of how this assignment works, but you get to choose among these three options, what you want to do. If it's a discussion, hey, answer one of these 4 questions. If it's an assignment or a project, hey, here's 4 projects. Pick one that really speaks to you or that you like more than the others. They all have relatively the same level of difficulty. They're all the same level of points. It's all these bounded areas to it, so there's equality there. But then the student gets a chance to choose among those things. And those are all ways in which you can kind of design with consistency, but still give the students enough variety to feel like they have some control over how they're doing it. Here's some ideas about using templates in general. And it is bent towards Canvas. I know that there's other LMS out there that are great. And apologize for those who are listening to this that maybe aren't using Canvas, but some of these principles still apply. It's just very specific to Canvas. So on the left-hand side, we're talking to teachers and faculty and designers if they're working directly with the teachers and faculty. But those 3 top bullets, use a simple homepage, simplify the navigation, and let the teachers in Canvas do their job. If you're going to use Canvas, use a homepage. Homepage is that landing page. There's lots of ways you can do a course, one of which is when I click on my course in Canvas, it just pulls up my modules, and I just see a list of my modules. That's fine, but the homepage is so much better. It's such a more common experience. When you click on a website, you always land on a homepage of some kind that then directs you to the different places that you want to go. But you don't want it to be everything and anything, right? The one thing, actually, I use Amazon as a good example of tech sometimes, but their homepage to me drives me crazy because it's just so cluttered and so full of all kinds of stuff. I never, ever look at what's on the homepage. You don't want to have a course homepage that's the same way, where it's just chock full of all the content and information that the students never want to know and don't ever need. So make it simple, make it clean. There's some examples of that. If you'd like to, you could always reach out to either Atomic Jolt or myself, and we can give you some examples. Simplify the navigation. Don't give students more options of getting to the places that they need to than one, if possible. Try to give them a linear step, kind of lockstep process and approach. That will allow them to eliminate some of the confusion of where did I see that, where did I find that, how did I get there. If it's kind of linear, that goes to both the design of the course as well as the way that you set up the navigation of the course. Then it gives you the chance to give students less opportunity to be confused. And then the last one there, let the features of Canvas do their job. Don't put a ton of due dates in the text of your instructions and in your discussions and quizzes and things. Select a due date and let the system do that. Because in Canvas, the due date, when you select the due date and you use the due date feature, it shows it in the assignment, it shows it in the modules, it shows it in the calendar, it shows it in the syllabus. All of those are automatically populated and all of those are automatically updated if you ever make a change to the due date. So instead of having to go in and make manual edits to text-based due dates, get rid of all those. And then the other beauty of that is that assuming the student has their time zone set up correctly in Canvas, then it will adjust the due date times to meet their time zone. So you don't have to try to get like doing flips backwards to try to help everyone understand exactly what time it's due. The system will tell them. The syllabus, same thing. You might have a syllabus. It's probably a beautiful PDF. Canvas has a really powerful syllabus feature, and I would use it. Use the content area for all of the content in the course, and then remove that table that has all the due dates in it for the reasons I just described. You probably have that in almost every syllabus I've seen that's a doc or a PDF, is this table of what the assignment is and when it's due, and you have to go through each of the items. Well, if you ever make a change to that, now you're dealing with syllabus versioning control, and oh, you're looking at the wrong date because that's the first syllabus. I emailed out the new syllabus. Did you get it? Oh, you didn't. Here, I'll email it to you again. If you just dump all that and say the syllabus in Canvas is the syllabus for this course, and it's always up to date and it's always accurate, and it's only one version of it. And if you look at it today and it's different than it was yesterday, that's because I updated it. And you don't have to wonder if you're looking at the right version of it. Use modules, use modules, use modules. Don't use files as a way of organizing your content that for your students to access. You can use files for yourself, but put content in the modules. That is what the modules are for. It's the course navigation feature inside of Canvas. That's the only thing it serves. It allows you to control when students access the content, in what order they access the content, and it gives you a kind of a one place where students can just scroll through and see everything that's involved in that course. It's probably the most critical component in your Canvas course, is getting your modules built out correctly. And if you're not using modules, you're probably not doing any favors for your students. And then this is for the teachers themselves, for the SpeedGrader. Again, if you're not using SpeedGrader, you're probably wasting your time unless everything's auto-graded. If you grade any kind of text-based replies, like a paper or an essay question or a discussion board, anything that can't be auto-graded, anything that's text-based that you need to give some feedback on, using the SpeedGrader is the only way to do it. It's a beautiful thing that has probably been the number one feature that has made Canvas so popular. And if you grade a lot of papers, it's an absolute must. Like, there's no doubt that the SpeedGrader needs to be a big part of your strategy. Items on the right, these are more for the admins and just kind of institutional decisions that can be made, whether it's a department or a district or even an individual institution or school, or even just a few teachers that are all part of, maybe there's 3 chemistry teachers at your school, and, kind of make some of these decisions amongst yourselves to give some consistency. But develop a template import strategy. If you create a template for everybody to use, which I highly recommend, and that's the second bullet there, don't try to control everything. Don't use this template as a means of saying this is exactly how every course in this whole school needs to look. It's a base. It's a place to start. It's just a springboard. So you don't look at this blank, empty shell and have to create something from scratch, which is so hard. But if you've got a few prompts and a few kind of organizational structural components, all of those things add some element of, okay, I can add to that because I see what they're trying to do here. But if you're trying to import content either from another LMS or from another course into this template, and you don't have some kind of a strategy to that, it could become very frustrating because of the way that Canvas works, where you're importing content and now you've got duplicates, or it imports it alongside, it doesn't replace. And so how do I merge these two? So be aware of how Canvas works when it comes to importing content into a course, and work with your admins and teachers to develop strategies around how to do that effectively, so that there's some training that addresses those concerns and questions, and so that you can create some of your own documentation, and so things work out the way that you're hoping it does. Get faculty input and get lots of student input. Notice I put some faculty input and lots of student input. Again, we're doing all this for the learners. Their experience is, the primary feedback mechanism that we need. I don't care how great the faculty love these courses. If the students are having a bad experience, then those courses are not right. So get lots of student input. Get feedback from them. Do user testing before you launch any large initiatives or large scale things. It's important to get faculty input too. But if you get 100 faculty in a room, or even 20, you're going to have 20 different opinions about how it should be. And that could be very stifling. So have kind of a core group of faculty, maybe 5 or 6, that represent a broad swath of the university or the school, the K-12 school, that can give you good input from a variety of perspectives, and then test it with students like all day. And that feedback will be a validation or go back to the drawing board of kind of some of the decisions that the admins and faculty have made. And then the last one there, pick your integrations and carefully then hold your ground. This is having to do with things that integrate in with Canvas. And so you've got all these third-party options. Canvas is almost like your phone, where you've got this whole app store and you've got all these different things you can integrate into your LMS. And if there's no strategy there and there's no way of having the admin kind of control some of that, then you're likely to get this hodgepodge of different experiences. And this, again, impacts students, where in one class they're using these 5 tools, and in another class they're using this one tool, and another class, and multiply that by 5, 6, or 7 courses. All the teachers think they're doing the greatest thing because this tool is so awesome for their needs, but the students are getting a total runaround. And they're having to learn all kinds of different things. And then every semester they have to learn another group of different tools. So my suggestion here is find ones that are most broadly applicable, that help in the most variety of situations for your institution, like a video editing tool and video archive. Pick one for maybe student engagement and discussion. Pick one for engaging sort of board kind of conversations. Those are some broad categories. Canvas even has Studio, which is for video. You've got those kinds of things. And then try to eliminate as much as you can any others creeping in, and let those be kind of your core group of tools along with Canvas or whatever your LMS is to use. And so your students can learn these systems, learn these tools. Your teachers can learn these tools. They can share amongst each other. Training's easier. Student experience is better. And you're not adding, this new repertoire of tools every single time. So speaking of tools, here's just kind of a last hurrah here. I just wanted to give sort of my suggestions. The left-hand column are those that are paid for. The right-hand column are those that are free or can be free. Some of them have paid subscriptions as well. But the Atomic apps are phenomenal. Couldn't go through this without giving a plug for Atomic Jolt. They've got search in Canvas, which can be invaluable. If you're trying to search Canvas, there's really no good way to do it. Atomic Search is a phenomenal way to supplement that and give you access to content and helping you find content in a way that would be otherwise not feasible. Atomic Discussions and then Atomic Assessments are both extensions on the standard Canvas toolset that would increase your students' ability and your ability to assess engagement, things like that. Another one of my favorites is Design Plus from City Labs. If you don't know them, give them a call, tell them Micah Murdoch sent you. It will help you with the look and feel of your course. Templates are a big deal for them. That's what they create. They help you create templates, homepages. You can create beautiful homepages with banners, navigation that's very elegant. Lots of stuff that typically requires HTML or JavaScript, but that you can just, at a click, add to your page and make them look beautiful and very functional. Pronto is another it's almost like Slack, which is a chat tool, but Pronto is like a chat tool for Canvas. And you can have it on your phone, you can have it in your class, and you can have these discussions. You can even turn on a live camera and do quick little video conferencing. It's a phenomenal tool. Look it up. It really helps increase and improve student engagement. YellowDig is another discussion tool. It kind of takes it more to almost like a social media kind of feel. It's a discussion, but and you can have them graded, but it feels more like a community discussion rather than a discussion board. And then Gradescope is there for all of those out there that have hand-graded paper assignments. So if you're a math or a science teacher and you're doing, show your work type graded assignments where students have to solve a formula, show their work, and you're trying to auto-grade that, or at least gain efficiency on auto-grading that, especially when you're trying to do that at like a scale in an online setting. Gradescope is a system that allows you to upload paper documents. The students do. They upload by taking a picture of it with their phone or through a scanner, and that gets inserted into a grading system that can compare through AI this formula with the one that you've kind of said it should be, and it helps give you ideas about how good they did on these assignments and how well their answers match the correct answers. And it's just a great way of incorporating all that. Quizlet, Flipgrid, Canva, Padlet, H5P, all of these are just a great set of tools for engagement, for creating. Canva is a nice way to create some really nice graphics or images or buttons, other things like that inside of Canvas. Padlet does that as well, sort of engaging. Flipgrid and Padlet are both kind of this idea of creating like a bullet board inside that you can have little sticky notes that get created or moved around. That I'm not doing it justice. There's a lot more to it than that, but those are engagement items. And then H5P is just a whole host of a series of widgets that you can build and to create little flashcards or little photo carousels or little quizzing tools that you can embed on the page, other things like that. And those are all free. So those are some of my favorite tools that I like to use a lot in my courses. That might give you some suggestions about how to use some of the practical end of designing inside of Canvas. Ultimately, I guess coming back kind of full circle here, if you'd like to, UpThinkConsulting.com, come visit my website, check me out. You can send me a request. Atomic Jolts, you can go there as well. That's atomicjolt.com. They can help you, and they help build custom type stuff, and can also help provide design suggestions and tips and tricks for Canvas and other systems as well. So there is kind of my bit.
I'm just curious really quick with the Canvas has so many features available. Sometimes it's very overwhelming for teachers when they first start. I've looked through Canvas's training. I've also looked on Canvas Commons. I know that you specialize in it specifically with teaching teachers and also students, but is there a starting place that you would suggest for universities that are just picking up Canvas on how to get started, training their
Yeah.
teachers and their students? I feel like it's a huge hurdle everywhere.
It is. It is. I mean, again, over the last year, like the need for this has just gone through the roof, right? Every single institution is trying to increase their usage and their adoption. And, where do we start? I think as far as resources go, the Canvas community is probably one of the best places to be familiar with that is provided by Canvas to get accurate, up-to-date, and current information. So going to the community provides you with a lot of documentation, guides, step-by-step, visually intense guides that can walk you through steps of how to use certain features. There's also about every question you can imagine has been asked in the community, and you can search for that question and look for the answer in the discussion that it kind of goes through it. So that's probably the easiest self-help resources. But this is exactly the kind of reason why my suggestion is to find and utilize the support resources you have available to you, which doesn't just mean internally. There are folks like you and myself that are there and intending to try to support districts and teachers. There's no silver bullet. It's going to take a little bit of time. And I think that having buy-in from the administration at the very top to know that this is something that all of my teachers need, and to have those conversations, even if it's just a consulting conversation. You don't necessarily have to know all the answers, but if you were to get in touch with an expert, whether it be from Instructure at Canvas, from someone like Atomic Jolt or UpThink, and say, look, I need 2 hours of time to consult with you about these core problems that I have that we'd like to try to resolve. Can you give me some direction? That's probably some of the best money a district can spend, and it's readily available. And even if you go directly to Canvas, when you're implementing a new instance of Canvas, they do provide you some training. Utilize that. Use the customer success manager that you have and the trainers that are available to you. They offer you, I think, every new instance of Canvas gets a free access to a free template that they can, at least one that they can download of their choice. So those are all, kind of the things that Instructure is doing. But beyond that, be willing to invest some money into some external help of those who do this all day long, who have lots of experience with it. There are too many institutions out there that have that kind of experience now with Canvas, or any LMS, quite frankly, most LMSs anyway, that to try to reinvent the wheel internally and to imagine that you can do it better because you know yourself and your teachers better than somebody else does. I think that's a missed opportunity to get somebody to help that has experience with these onboarding options.